Alright, you know me by now how much I love examples, and this one's going to be quite fun because what I'm wanting to do is I'm wanting to display to us the entire capturing and bubbling process. It's going to be really cool, and we're going to be using the for of loop to do so. So what are we waiting for? Let's get cracking. What I want to do is I want to create a simple HTML page. Now I just want to include styles just to make it look a bit more funky, and I want to style our entire body. Okay, I'm wanting all our elements to have a margin of 10 pixels, and I want to put a border around each element we create. Let's just give it a width of 1 pixel. Let's say it's a solid border, and let's just give it a color of red. So very simple, nothing too fancy going on there. Let's now create our body element. Within our body, I want to create 3 nested elements. First, let's create a div. Then let's create a form. Let's get rid of the action here. We don't need an action. Then the last thing I want to do is create a paragraph element. So there we go. Pretty simple, right? And if we go and look at this in the browser, this is what it's going to look like. Let's start our live server. So there we go. We've got our div, we've got our form, and we've got our paragraph elements. Obviously, if we click on this, nothing's going to happen because we haven't added an event listener. So let's do that now. It's going to be pretty simple. Firstly, let's add our JavaScript here. And remember what I said, I want to use the for of loop. I don't want to manually add an event listener. And this is getting quite advanced now, but you'll see how simple it is once you get the hang of it. So the for of loop is a very simple function. Just bear in mind, if you're not sure what it is, you can always check out my JavaScript Complete Grandmaster course to get a more intuitive feel as to how JavaScript itself works. But as you'll see, it is almost just as basic as reading the function. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to loop through all of our elements on our page and put them in a variable. Let's define our variable as DOM element. And then the object that we're wanting to loop through is what? Well, that's going to be our query selector. Of course, there are other ways we can do it, but I'm happy to use our query selector all. So what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to grab every single element in our DOM. It is literally this simple. So just remember what it is we're doing. When we find all the elements in our DOM via the query selector all, a collection is returned to us. And we're just looping through that collection, and every item in that collection is put into a variable here called DOM element. And now we want to add event listeners to all of these, don't we? And we're wanting to do it both for the capturing phase and for the bubbling phase. So let's first deal with the capturing phase. We're going to access our element that's been returned to us in that item. We're going to add an event listener, a click event listener. And yes, now we could actually define a handler function, but I just want to execute it inline. So I'm just going to use the arrow syntax here. And what are we going to do? Let's just alert something to the screen. Let's use template literals. Again, if you don't know what all of this is, please check out my JavaScript Complete Grandmaster course. If you do know what it is, great, you can follow along. As I mentioned, this is going to be for the capturing phase. And now I want to use the dollar and curly brace syntax to put in a variable. Here we're going to use our DOM element, and I want to get the tag name. For example, the HTML, the div, the form, the P, whatever that tag name is. And in order to specify that we want this to listen on the capturing phase, what do we have to do? That's right, we have to provide a third argument to the add event listener method, and the third argument needs to be true. Now, the last thing we want to do is do exactly the same thing, but on the bubbling phase. So we access our element. We add the add event listener method. Again, it's going to be a click event, and we can use the arrow syntax once again. I just want to let you know that we don't actually have to put it within curly brackets like we did above. We can actually just execute our alert function directly by typing alert. Okay, I just want to show you different ways of doing things. Here, it's going to be during the bubbling phase. And I want to do exactly the same thing. I want to display its tag name. So there we go. Is that kind of making sense? Is it intuitive? I hope so. So let's go to our browser and let's think about what would happen when we go and click this paragraph element. What do you think will happen? We'll take a step back. Where do all events originate from? It originates from the window object, from the root of our document. So I'd expect during the capturing phase for many alerts to be shown, right? In fact, I would expect it to start from the HTML tag itself. And it's going to bubble down to then the body, then it's going to hit the div, then the form, and then finally that paragraph element. And that is going to form the capturing phase, aka phase 1. But it doesn't stop there, does it? Because what happens next? That's right, it's going to bubble all the way back up to the root element. Hope it's making sense. So let's click this paragraph and let's see what happens. Well, there we go. We know we're in the capturing phase and it's HTML. That's exactly what we expected. When we click OK, I'd expect it to be the body. And that's what we have. How awesome. The next item it's going to capture, of course, is the div element. Then it's going to do the form element and then finally the paragraph element. But as I mentioned, it doesn't stop here, does it? Because what's going to happen now when we click OK? Well, that's right. It's going to start the bubbling phase. And the bubbling phase starts at the event target, in this case, the P, and it's going to work its way all the way back up to the window root object. So I would expect the next alert to be the form. That's right. The next one will be the div. The next one will be the body. The next one will be the HTML. And then we are done. Man, this stuff really is awesome and it's very, very advanced. Now you understand the entire process, but there's still more I want to talk about. I'll see you in the next lecture.